Contingency measures go into action as Venezuela responds to another attack on its electricity system. Boris Johnson is set to take over as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom after being selected as Conservative Party leader. And the acting Spanish PM has failed in his first attempt to form a government. Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla Gonzalez from Quito, and this is From the South. The Venezuelan Minister of Communication, Jorge Rodriguez, has said that the working day will be suspended to better facilitate the full restoration of electricity service after an electromagnetic attack on the country's Guayana hydroelectric power generation system. The government said that an interruption to electricity supply was first felt at around 4:45 p.m. local time. This happened, of course, yesterday, and by 10:30 p.m., electricity had been restored in various neighborhoods of the capital, Caracas, including Katia, El Valle, and San Martín, among others. The minister explained the measures that the government is taking to overcome the problem.
The Bolivarian government of Venezuela informs that today, at 4:45 p.m., there was a national power outage. The first-hand information received for our investigation in Bajo Caroni have showed an electromagnetic attack aimed at the hydroelectric generator system of Guayana, the country's main electric power provider. Fortunately, following the recent attacks on the power system during the months of March and April 2019, the government has implemented different protocols which allow us to affirm that we are working on reestablishing the electric connections nationwide. We have also activated through different ministries and institutions the mechanisms to provide potable water, public transportation, and health services. We have deployed security forces to guarantee the safety and peace of our population. The people responsible for these attacks will be defeated again. They will experience the courage and nerve of the sons and daughters of our liberator, Simón Bolívar. We will defeat them. Venceremos.
This latest blackout comes just hours after the country's Minister of Communication showed footage of U.S. spy planes violating Venezuela's airspace. In the footage shown, taken from a Venezuelan jet, a U.S. plane can be seen clearly as it flies into Venezuelan sovereign airspace. This U.S. spy plane was intercepted by Venezuelan fighter jets on Friday, July 19. The plane was detected by the nation's aerospace defense system, and the minister confirmed that it was flying without legal authorization. But just as he was presenting this information, Rodriguez announced that another spy plane was at that very moment flying over Venezuela. The government of the United States has announced it will fast-track the deportation of migrants without allowing them to appear before a judge. The new regulation will apply to any person living in the U.S. without papers for less than 2 years. Human rights groups say that up to 300,000 people could be targeted under the plan. The move has been condemned as a violation of rights and would rip apart thousands of families and devastate entire communities. The Donald Trump administration is keen to be seen as tough on migration. And it has been 45 days since the Mexican government signed an agreement with the United States on curbing the flow of migration towards the United States. Otherwise, the Trump administration would have imposed heavy tariffs on Mexican exports.
In 45 days, Mexico's government has reduced the number of migrants entering the country through its southern border by 36%. These migrants mostly come from Central American countries like Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, with high hopes of seeking asylum in the United States.
The measures Mexico has taken were according to its own laws and policies, and they are proved to be effective. We have been able to address the issues of letting people passing through our territory, but only those who are doing so according to our policies.
President Andrés Manuel López Obrador says he will maintain the current migratory plan, which includes the deployment of the National Guard at several border points.
We believe the best is to keep the flow of migrants organized in a way that we can care for the migrants and respect their human rights. And we will do so little by little because it's not easy to solve the issues behind migration.
This report comes just a day after U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visited Mexico and 45 days after the Mexican government signed a migration deal with the United States in order to avoid an initial 5% of US tariffs on Mexican exports.
There was no discussion about the third safe country, which I insist is a proposal that was on the table, because in those days it was a very difficult situation, but we did not accept it.
The Mexican government's short-term plans for migration include investments for migration centres and also continuing with the development plans for Central American countries like Guatemala, El Salvador and Honduras.
Actually, this is not going to stop migration, but will simply change a little the number we have seen so far in terms of forced migration. And I'm not talking about the last few months, which is a more evident migration, but something that has been going on for at least 15 years.
Meanwhile, operations to stop human trafficking continue as well. Trucks filled with undocumented people are not uncommon on the roads. And in these cases, Mexican authorities say that not only the drivers will be investigated, but also the owners of the vehicles used for human trafficking.
Now we turn to Puerto Rico, where protesters are still demanding Governor Ricardo Rosselló's resignation, despite his assertions that he won't continue in office beyond the end of his term in 2020. The Bar Association of Puerto Rico has said that there is enough support in the island's legislature to force the exit of the governor. Trade unions and civil society organizations added their weight to the protests, and police have also urged his exit for their own safety. At least 14 people have been injured by police repression of the demonstrations so far, which began over a week ago. We spoke to Heriberto Martinez, the incoming president of the Economists Association of Puerto Rico, about the current events in the island.
Join together in the streets and send a message to the governor of Puerto Rico, Ricardo Rosselló, that it's time to step down and present his complete resignation as the position of governor. The environment during the protests was very peaceful. Again, the idea of this activity, the idea of this mass protest was to show the world that we can be together, that we can do this peacefully, and that we can celebrate a new era in the politics of Puerto Rico.
The president of the Dominican Republic, Danilo Medina, has announced that he won't modify the country's constitution to be able to seek re-election in 2020 for the third time. This comes after months of protests against the constitutional reform.
When I reach the end of my second term and leave my post as president, I want to be able to go on the streets and walk like an average citizen, and look people in the eye with the peace of mind of someone who fulfilled his duty with honesty and humility.
The Prime Minister of Haiti, Jean-Michel Lapon, has resigned after failing to form a government. Lapon said he had sent his resignation to President Jovenel Moïse and said that he had made the decision for Haiti. Since he was appointed in March, Lapon has been unable to get his political program passed by the Senate. President Moïse appointed Fritz William Michel, a former executive in the Ministry of Economy and Finance, as Lapon's replacement. Lapon is the third Prime Minister to leave office in less than a year. The Jamaican Justice Minister Delroy Chuck has said the government is expanding efforts to ensure witness protection by providing 2 buses to assist in securing the testimony. The details have been worked out at a witness care conference. Chuck said that the mission of the ministry is to create a first-class justice system for all. The ministry is investing in technology, including digital audio and video facilities, to limit witness intimidation.
So that's workshop 1 based on.
Also in Jamaica, Prime Minister Andrew Holness is celebrating his 47th birthday. Holness was surprised by his cabinet to mark the occasion. He said that he is grateful for the opportunity to continue to serve the people of Jamaica. We'll take a short break now, but when we come back, we'll look at reactions to the UK's new Prime Minister in waiting. Don't go away.
acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur.
Thank you for joining us. More news at this hour. Boris Johnson will take the mantle of British Prime Minister from Theresa May after winning the Conservative Party's leadership contest. Johnson took 66% of the vote against his rival Jeremy Hunt in an internal election heavily criticized as undemocratic and unrepresentative. Unlike in a general election, only members of the Conservative Party participated to choose who would lead the United Kingdom. The Conservative Party membership has an average age of 57. Around 160,000 votes were cast, with Johnson's support limited to fewer than 100,000 people.
We're going to get Brexit done on October the 31st. We're going to take advantage of all the opportunities that it will bring in a new spirit of can-do. And we are once again going to believe in ourselves and what we can achieve. And like some slumbering giant, we are going to rise and ping off the guy ropes of self-doubt and negativity.
And a number of high-profile ministers, including Finance Minister Philip Hammond, have announced their intention to resign before Johnson takes office, in protest at his intention to take the UK out of the European Union without a deal. The Conservative Party remains split on Europe, despite ostensibly being the party of Brexit. The opposition Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn says Boris Johnson's victory does not mean he has the support of the British people. Corbyn tweeted, "Boris Johnson has won the support of fewer than 100,000 unrepresentative Conservative Party members by promising tax cut for the richest, presenting himself as the banker's friend, and pushing for a damaging no-deal Brexit. But he hasn't won the support of our country." Earlier, we asked Telesur's political analyst Tariq Ali what the selection of Boris Johnson meant and what was likely to happen next.
Well, I mean, the first point to make, and to stress this point because the BBC is tending to underplay and ignore it, that this is not some giant historic moment. This is the Conservative Party. Its members form the electorate. They have elected Boris as leader. He has not been elected by the country. And the Conservatives are now in the habit of doing this, changing prime ministers in midstream and then going to the country. The only interesting thing now is how long before Boris is forced to go to the country and seek a mandate from the people. That will depend on how the Conservative Party weathers the storm. Brexit, of course, is the key issue. If Boris goes for a no-deal Brexit, which some of his supporters want, he will lose the confidence of many Conservatives who could then vote against him in Parliament, triggering a general election. If he doesn't go for a no-deal Brexit, but effectively accepts a slightly amended version of Theresa May, his predecessor's deal with the EU, the hardcore Brexiters will give him a lot of trouble. So I think what we have to understand is that despite this farce and so-called show of unity, the Conservative Party, the traditional ruling class party of Britain, is deeply split and divided. And 51% of Boris's supporters in the Conservative Party have said They want a no-deal Brexit. They will go with him, and if the Conservative Party splits, so be it. So it's nothing for him to boast about. The other thing he's promising is to defeat Jeremy Corbyn. And I have to say this, that the coverage on the BBC has been appalling. Instead of getting a supporter of the Labour Party leadership to take this on, they find some old Blairites who hate Corbyn almost as much as Boris Johnson and put them on the screen and then pretend that this is a sort of objective discussion. So we are in a critical situation in Britain now, and I think the only serious way forward is a general election. Will it happen this year or the following year? We don't know. But I think Boris will probably be a very short-lived prime minister. But, you know, there's a problem here. I mean, that outside the European Union, the only power the British government will be able to rely on and be very close to is the United States. So even if Britain leaves the European Union, which it is now going to do in some shape or form, it will continue to remain a satrapy, a semi-colony of the United States, especially in terms of foreign policy, but not just foreign policy. When Trump visited Britain, he accidentally announced that they were prepared to help Britain, but he said, you've got to open up your national health service to American companies. So there's going to be trouble whatever happens. And if Scotland cannot stomach a Brexit and decides to go for independence, then that will be a huge blow to a ruling class which has known how to govern with a degree of stability now for nearly 200 years. So I think the situation here is much more serious than the media in Britain are presenting it as. It's not just about Boris Johnson, it's about the future of this country. And here, what happens in the next election is crucial. And the ruling class in Britain and its interests within the Labour Party, the right wing of the Labour Party, are really trying very hard to crush Corbyn, to defeat him by setting up this totally fake campaign of so-called anti-Semitism. Why are there so many anti-Semites in the Labour Party? A, there aren't that many. B, there are no more anti-Semites in the Labour Party than in the Conservative Party or the Lib Dem. Obviously, there is a degree of anti-Semitism, but to target Labour, and today's Financial Times saying that Labour is now an anti-Semitic party is one of the most disgusting editorials I have read in a serious British newspaper for a very long time. And the aim is to discredit Corbyn on the basis of a campaign which is fake and based on lies. So everything is being done to weaken Labour and basically to weaken Corbyn. And I think they hope that if Boris has to be got rid of, they will be able to form a national government with Blairite supporters in the Labour Party, the Lib Dems, and dissident Tories. That will be the way they will go about it. It's what they've done in the past, and I have no doubt that that is what they are discussing at the moment.
A very complete analysis by Tariq Ali on the future of the UK. And still to come, India has dismissed President Trump's claims that he was asked to mediate in the dispute over Kashmir. Stay with us.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, Yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Get your body. Tuesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The leader of the Spanish PSOE party, Pedro Sánchez, has failed in his first attempt to form a government. Sánchez became the prime ministerial candidate with the fewest votes in the history of the Spanish Congress, with 124 votes in favor, 170 against, and 52 abstentions. He broke his own record set in 2016. The PSOE now has 2 days to negotiate an agreement to form a government before the next investment debate. Party activists hope to see a deal made with Unidas Podemos, who abstained during this session.
We have to speak about content and programs, rather than about who will sit on the blue seats. The ministers who sit on the bench won't be from PSOE or Unidas Podemos. They will be from a progressive, feminist, ecological and pro-European Spanish government.
Now, Sánchez will only need a simple majority to form a government at the next vote on Thursday. However, Basque and Catalan sovereignty parties on the left and right of the political spectrum could deny him the office acting on the condition of an agreement between the PSOE and Podemos.
I will tell you something. MPs of the Socialist Party and of the Unidas Podemos, we, that group over there, won the elections in our country. In Catalonia, 1 million of votes and 15 lawmakers. We are, and we believe we are, the main Catalan group in this chamber. We are indispensable for the governability of this country. You have to talk to us. As my grandmother said, it's not rocket science, even if you don't want to see us.
In other news, Israeli forces are tearing down houses that are too close to a segregation wall in the village of Surbaher. 16 residential buildings have been targeted to the south of Arab Jerusalem, holding around 100 apartments. Israel proceeded with the demolition despite international criticism after the Israeli Supreme Court agreed with the military that the buildings pose a security risk. The United Nations has said it laments the decision. Palestinians argue that the move is part of Israeli colonial policy, which seeks to build more illegal settlements on Palestinian land.
The cabinet condemns this grave aggression. This is a continuation of the forced displacement of the people of Jerusalem from their homes and lands. This is a war crime and a crime against humanity.
Let's turn to our correspondent in Cairo, Nayara Tardo. She has more on the demolitions.
This Tuesday, the Arab League put out a statement condemning the Israeli demolition campaign against Palestinian homes in Surbaer, on the edge of East Jerusalem. The Assistant General Secretary of the Arab League for Palestinian Affairs, Saed Abu Ali, said that this campaign is part of Israel's policy to expand the illegal Jewish settlements in Palestinian territory. The United Nations, during a meeting of the Security Council, also discussed the situation and called on Israel to halt the demolition immediately. The UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, gave his backing to the declarations by the UN Humanitarian Coordinator in Palestinian territories, Jamie McGoldrick, who sharply criticized the demolitions. The Israeli security forces moved into the community on Monday with mechanical diggers. They forced Palestinian families to leave their homes before placing explosives and demolishing at least 4 buildings.
Our correspondent Nayara Tardo. The Ethiopian government is considering replacing the Boeing plane company with the French Airbus. Following the Ethiopian Airways plane crash and the grounding of the Boeing 737 over safety issues, the African country has turned to its French rival Airbus. The two countries discussed the deal during the state visit to Ethiopia by the French finance minister. India has denied claims by the U.S. president that it has asked him to mediate on the Kashmir dispute. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said he never asked President Donald Trump to help mediate with Pakistan in the dispute over Kashmir. The U.S. president claimed during a press conference that Modi had asked him to take that task on Monday. His comments brewed a political storm in India, which has not shown interest in third-party involvement in Kashmir issues. Let's remember that both India and Pakistan claim ownership of the area.
No such request was made by the Prime Minister to the US President. I would, sir, also reiterate that it has been India's consistent position that all outstanding issues with Pakistan are discussed only bilaterally. I would further underline that any engagement with Pakistan would require an end to cross-border terrorism. Sir, let me conclude by emphasizing that the Shimla Agreement and the Lahore Declaration provide the basis to resolve all issues between India and Pakistan bilaterally. I hope, in the view of my very specific and categorical responses, that there is no confusion in the mind of anybody on this.
And with that, we end our news brief. But as always, you can find all of our stories by checking our website, telesurenglish.net. And for our viewers in Africa, you can find us on Starsat channel 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria. And be sure to join us also on social media. I'm Carla Gonzalez for Telesur English. Until next time.